everyone, it's Jen. I am reined in up here in Queensland with the cyclone, so I thought I'd just edit a few images before the weather gets too bad and just show you guys a transformation from a really hazy straight out of camera shot, because it's backlit, to my crisp and clean edit, which is much more in line with my style. So this is just shot against a giant window in Christie's studio, and this is just an ottoman we're using and one of the poses that's in our guide. And sometimes I can shoot it and it's crisp and clear, but most of the time with the amount of light that's coming through, you'll find that it's really hazy like this. So first step, I've got my preset that I use for it, but I'll take you through what the preset actually is. I'm also going to load that preset for a couple of dollars in the store for anyone who just wants the easiness of it. It's just taking its dehazing, and I find if I use that dehaze filter, it really affects the skin tone. So there's just a few adjustments in colouring and also in increasing the clarity, taking a little bit of vibrance and a little bit of saturation out of it. With this particular one, I'm just going to bring clarity up just a teensy little bit more as well. The preset's got it set at a very base level so that it can be increased at will rather than having to take it back. So I'm pretty happy with the exposure and everything like that with it. Obviously, if you needed to adjust exposure, you just go up or down. This is Lightroom, by the way. If you don't use Lightroom, I find it really just speeds up my workflow. I can do these kind of color adjustments really quickly, and just use Photoshop for the last finishing touches if I need to. So she's had her hair and makeup professionally done, and I would say that there may be some fake tan here because her hands are significantly less warm than her skin tone. So what I'm going to do is just even that skin tone out for her a little bit. I just think it adds more polish to the image, and in real life you can't see these dramatic differences between them. It's just this particular pose. So I've got a couple of presets. I've got an add yellow and a remove yellow. So they're just brush presets, by the way. So removing yellow just takes the temperature down and adds a little bit of magenta back in, and I find it's an adjustment I need to do a lot when professional makeup is done, particularly if it's Napoleon makeup. For some reason, for me, that just really photographs super green. Okay, so that's taken out a lot of that from the skin tone. So, and if you find that it goes a little bit too far, you can just flick across and just decrease the amount of the effect of that brush. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to use my add yellow brush, which is just adding yellow and just also decreasing exposure a little bit because it's a little bit bright. So I'm going to even decrease exposure on that, even just a tiny bit more, so it all sort of matches and is in line with it. I'm just really quickly going to lighten up her elbow a little bit there, just because it was bugging me that it was a little bit darker. For whatever reason, the shadows are just falling there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how this looks. You could sell this image how it is now. You could do a couple of little clarity adjustments on the eyelashes and things like that. I like to run portraiture on almost all of my images, and I'm just going to show you what I would do if this was my client image. So I'm just going to take it across to Photoshop now. You'll have to bear with my computer, it's a little bit slow because I'm running the screen capture program on it at the same time. Okay, so here we are. So the first thing I do is usually just run a high pass filter on it. So I'm going to duplicate the layer and I'm going to go to high pass. Sorry, I'm used to using shortcuts, but I'm trying to show you guys in the menus today, so I might fumble a little bit. Okay, so I usually have the radius set to around about 4 for this, but this is a really subtle image, so I'm going to leave it at around about 3. Okay, and then you just flick that layer to overlay. So if you can see, I don't know how good the screen capture program is at capturing this finer detail, but all it's done is add a whole lot of detail and depth to the edges of things on there. I do this first because next I'm going to do skin softening and things, and I want to know how it's going to look after it's sharpened. I use that high pass filter instead of sharpening most of the time. Okay, so I'm just going to clone those, then I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to do just a little bit of skin retouching. Her skin is really awesome, but this is where I would retouch any blemishes and things. So this crease here, if you pose any woman where in a position where her neck's like this, you're going to get the creases along the neck. They're completely natural and normal, but I like to just lighten the shadows in them so that it doesn't pull the focus, particularly in a very light image like this. Now it's completely gone. All I've done is use the patch tool and take it away completely. Then I lower the opacity down enough so the crease is still there. She doesn't look plastic, and everyone has a crease there, but it's not as dark and it doesn't draw my eye to it anymore. So merge that, and the last thing I'm going to do, just because of the way Bubby decided to lie when we put her on her tummy, it's just her belly is sitting in a slightly odd shape. Anyone who's been pregnant clearly understands that. In my photos I generally would just smooth that out a little bit, so I'm going to go to liquify and just round it out a little bit to where it would be sitting if Bub hadn't decided to kick at that precise moment. You know, she's got an awesome figure, so if there was any little lumps and bumps just because of the way I've posed them, I would smooth them out for the client in this step of the process. So just a really subtle change there, just to smooth out how the bump is sitting. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to merge. At any of these times you can go across to history and take some snapshots. Generally my processing is fairly smooth and I don't do enough steps to really need that camera tool, but it's a really good thing to do. Just take a snapshot like that so that you can keep going back to the steps, especially while you're learning. So that's that. Last thing I'll just do is run portraiture over the image. So I usually just pick a mid-tone of the skin. Now often I'll invert this and paint it on in specific areas, but because she's a brunette and she's quite dark skinned and everything else doesn't matter if it gets smooth, I'm just going to reduce it down to sort of 50% opacity and leave it as is. You could put a mask on and brush it off the lips like that if you wanted to. If she had blonde hair, I'd brush it off the hair and the eyelashes as well. Okay, so the last thing I do is I use Kelly Brown's actions. I use the clarify action here just to paint onto the eyelashes. Just changing my brush back to 100%, and I usually bring that down to around about 70%, and then I will also run sharpen and just pop that, and just lightly over the hair I run the sharpen on backlit images, just so that you can see the detail just a teensy bit more. Okay, so I am done with that image. I would just save it and go back out if I'm using it for web, I'll run a resizing and sharpening action for that as well.